Start the engine. That's what Queen Camilla told the valet. No royal clearance, no co-signature, just her word, and a plan to hand the Queen's limousine to her son. But when Sergeant Bainbridge stepped between the fender and the trailer, when he read the name on the transport form, what he shouted froze everyone in the garage. Before we show you the second Prince William walked in, the last line Camilla managed to say, and the moment the guard blocked the door with his body, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this wasn't about a limousine, it was about the last place she felt like herself, and the one man who refused to let them drive it away. The Royal Vehicle Gallery at Windsor had its own kind of silence, not the brittle quiet of libraries or the rigid stillness outside Buckingham. This was softer, older, the hush of velvet rope and polished brass, the hum of climate control keeping leather from cracking. Each car spaced just far enough apart that you could walk between them without ever feeling crowded. Sergeant Aldric Bainbridge moved through it the way he always did, boots precise, gloved hand trailing once across the bonnet of a classic Daimler, checking for dust that rarely dared settle here. He wasn't really inspecting for dust, he was inspecting for change, movement, disturbance. Behind him, Private Kendrick tapped at the maintenance tablet, frowning at something on the screen. Oil reserve needs balancing on Bay 6. Noted. Kendrick scrolled again. Stopped. Oh, and Camilla's son is scheduled to view the 53 Phantom this afternoon. Just says preview. Probably for a magazine shoot or something. Bainbridge stopped walking. Didn't turn. Just stood there, staring at the glass cabinet that held the archival keys. What did you say? Kendrick glanced up, suddenly uncertain. The old Rolls, 1953 Phantom IV. The Queen's. I mean, Her late Majesty's. Someone logged it for a private viewing. Bainbridge finally turned. Who logged it? Kendrick tapped the screen a few more times, brow furrowing. Windsor Vehicle Services. Timestamp from this morning. Mobile entry. No barcode. Just typed in manually. There were two things Aldric Bainbridge had learned to fear in 20 years of service. Fire in a timber wing and manual overrides in a digital logbook. He reached out, took the tablet from Kendrick without asking, and swiped through the request himself. Sparse. No route plan. No security form. No driver assignment. Just one line. Vehicle prepared for TPB per House Clarence. Thomas Parker Bowles. Bainbridge's hand tightened around the edge of the screen. The Phantom IV hadn't moved from Vault 2 in over 11 years. After the Queen's passing, it had been pulled from ceremonial rotation and placed under sealed class. Not retired, not reassigned, just respected. And now someone had queued it up like a museum piece for Camilla's son to preview. He handed the tablet back without a word. Kendrick looked nervous now. Should I prep the bay? No. Bainbridge's voice was quiet, flat. No one touches it. He crossed the gallery toward the security alcove, boots clicking softly on polished stone. Took his shy. The black panel on the wall blinked green as he scanned his credential. Inside, the archival logs still listed the 1953 Phantom as static, sealed, royal custodial clearance required. And yet, someone had keyed a mobile override without notice, without signature, without asking the people who mattered. Bainbridge exhaled once through his nose. He didn't speak. He just turned and walked toward Vault 2, because legacy wasn't a display piece, and it damn well wasn't a hand-me-down. Vault 2 didn't echo. It absorbed sound the way velvet absorbs light. Thick stone walls, insulated floors, soft pin lights above each platform. A small brass plaque near the entrance read, Legacy Class, Royal Use Only. Bainbridge stepped inside and the air shifted around him. Not colder, not heavier, just still. And there she was. The 1953 Rolls-Royce Phantom IV, long, low, and quiet in its corner. Positioned at a soft angle, nose pointed slightly toward the curved glass wall, like it had stopped just short of leaving. The black lacquer gleamed without arrogance. The silver detailing hadn't dulled. The tyres were cleaned monthly, pressure checked twice a year. But no engine had turned, no door had been opened, because no one had dared. Bainbridge walked the perimeter like he always did, boots precise, posture square, as if the car could still feel the uniform. He stopped near the rear passenger door. The last time it had opened, the Queen had stepped out with 2 corgis flanking her. A hospital visit, unannounced. The press hadn't even known she was coming. She wore a deep green coat that day, hair swept under a scarf, and no brooch. Only the dogs. Only the car. Only her. It had been her preferred vehicle for unannounced appearances, quiet charity work, small-town visits, bereavement calls. Not the golden carriage, not the Land Rover with the Highland mud. This one was different. The leather inside still carried the trace of her lavender sachets. Subtle, clean, old world. Bainbridge had smelled it during his last inspection, even though he'd never touched the handle. There was a faint lipstick imprint on the folding vanity mirror. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out the laminated archive slip. It had been written by Windsor's archivist 2 weeks after the funeral. A single-line note, initialed in ink, by Prince William beneath it. The Queen's final operational vehicle, static display, not to be reassigned. It wasn't a legal order. It didn't need to be. The archivist had called it posthumous etiquette. But Bainbridge had always understood the truth. This car was the one thing Her Majesty had chosen repeatedly in her final years, not because it photographed well, but because it didn't. He moved toward the front, crouched slightly, and studied the chrome trim under the headlamp. A small scratch curved beneath the edge, an old mark from a narrow cottage gate in Norfolk. The Queen had refused to buff it out. When asked why, she'd apparently said, "It's mine. Let it keep its memories." Bainbridge stood again. This wasn't machinery, it was a vessel, a witness, a memory so thick it had mass. And now someone wanted to strap it to a trailer and cart it off for a photo shoot with Camilla's son. Not yet, he thought, not while I'm still breathing. He walked to the corner, scanned the perimeter lock again and checked the digital seal log. Nothing new, no one had touched it. Yet. The first sign of trouble wasn't noise, it was cheerfulness. "Ah, there he is." The voice came smooth, theatrical, far too loud for a place like Vault 2. Bainbridge turned from the wall panel just as Thomas Parker Bowles stepped into the archway, one polished shoe landing softly on the reinforced floor. His coat was folded over one arm, designer sunglasses tucked in the collar, and in his other hand, a sleek, leather-bound folio, thick enough to pretend it held real authority. "Didn't think you'd be here in person," Thomas grinned, stopping just short of the vehicle. "Not that I blame you. She's a beauty, isn't she?" Bainbridge didn't smile. "This area's restricted. Clearance required. Which I have." Thomas waved the folio like a ticket stub. "Mum signed off this morning. Just a quick look. Maybe a short drive around the inner quadrangle. Nothing dramatic. No press. No fuss." Bainbridge didn't respond. He simply held out his hand. Thomas hesitated, then chuckled. "You guards. All the same, no imagination." Still, he handed over the folio. Inside were several pages of general use documents, archival overview, inventory index, photocopies of previous transport orders. At the back, a printed sheet bore a digital signature from Clarence House, logged less than 3 hours ago. No co-signature, no archivist approval, no prince's seal. Just the line. Prepared for ceremonial activation. Private family engagement, TPB. Bainbridge lowered the folder. "This document isn't valid." Thomas blinked. "I'm sorry?" "There's no custodial authorization, no vault unlock log, no release from the heritage registrar." "Well, that's just bureaucracy, isn't it?" Thomas's eyes danced. "We've got the key. We've got the fob. Mum says it's fine." Bainbridge didn't move. "That key's been sealed since Her Majesty's passing." "Well," Thomas shrugged, "now it's unsealed." Bainbridge stepped closer to the limousine, just enough to place himself between the vehicle and Thomas. His voice stayed calm. This car wasn't just another entry in the transport manifest. It was the Queen's personal conveyance for legacy visit. It's been preserved under classed display. By order, and by respect. Exactly, Thomas said, eyes gleaming. And what better way to honour that legacy than to put it back on the road? We're not pawning it off, Sergeant. We're giving it a second life. Bainbridge stared at him. That vehicle doesn't need a second life. It already completed its first. Thomas's smile faltered. You're saying the Queen would rather see it rot under glass. I'm saying she left it here, Bainbridge replied, voice tightening, and she didn't leave it for you. The silence between them was short, but it held. Thomas shifted his weight, suddenly aware that the man in front of him wasn't a valet or a driver. He was something older, something rooted. Well, he said, clearing his throat, let's not make this difficult. We'll be bringing it out either way. Bainbridge said nothing, but he didn't step aside. By midday, the corridor outside Vault 2 was no longer quiet. Low voices echoed down the stone passageway. Aides, attendants, clipboard bearers, all arriving in a coordinated wave that didn't feel accidental. When Bainbridge stepped out to investigate, the sight that met him was the one he'd been dreading. A small procession. 2 Windsor aides, 1 private secretary in a dove-grey coat holding an iPad, and behind them, a valet in full ceremonial whites pushing a mobile polish cart with microfiber cloths and a can of chrome cleaner. Excuse me, Bainbridge said sharply, stepping forward. What's your clearance here? The valet froze, cloth halfway to a mirror. The secretary didn't even flinch. Per the Queen Consort's order, the 1953 Phantom is being prepared for private reassignment. Documentation's already filed. Filed where? Windsor Records. He motioned toward the tablet in her hand. Show me. The woman hesitated, just long enough to betray she couldn't. Then, from the archway behind her, a familiar voice cut through the air. Calm, clipped, certain. Let the man do his job. The staff stepped aside as Camilla entered. She was dressed like she'd been on her way to a walkabout. Cream coat, leather gloves, scarf knotted elegantly. But her eyes weren't soft. They carried a sharpness that didn't match her outfit. She walked directly toward the Phantom, heels quiet on stone. The way she looked at the vehicle wasn't sentimental. It was evaluative, like she was deciding where it might fit best in her schedule. Still beautiful, she said softly, brushing a gloved hand across the car's polished surface. Charles always said it deserved to be seen again. Bainbridge remained still. With respect, Your Majesty, this vehicle is not in active service and it's under static legacy protection. Camilla's attention didn't shift. That's precisely why I'm here. It's being reassigned for family engagements. Thomas will use it for Windsor charity tours next month. The Queen would have approved. She never signed it over. Camilla turned, one eyebrow lifting slightly. I don't require her signature, Sergeant. I require mine, and I've given it. Not on the record. The heritage log has no signature from any recognised custodian. Camilla smiled faintly, tilting her head. Then consider this your notification. He didn't move. With respect, ma'am, you're not the archival custodian. Her voice cooled instantly. And who would that be? Prince William, Bainbridge said quietly, and the royal registrar beneath him. The pause that followed could have cracked glass. Camilla's smile didn't disappear, but it hardened at the edges. We'll settle this shortly. For now, she gestured toward the valet. Polish it properly, would you? There's far too much dust near the door frame. Bainbridge's voice sharpened. Stand down. The valet froze mid-step, caught between 2 orders. Camilla's gaze cut toward him. Excuse me. Bainbridge didn't raise his voice, but every syllable landed like a hammer. All handling is paused until archival confirmation is received. Camilla exhaled through her nose, a faint, disbelieving laugh. You're serious? He didn't answer. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, regal murmur. Sergeant Bainbridge, you're being obstinate, just consistent. Camilla leaned in slightly. You'll find there's a difference. Her gloved hand hovered above the bonnet, the faintest trace of defiance in the gesture. This vehicle will leave Windsor, she said evenly, with or without your blessing. Bainbridge's reply came quiet, controlled, not without the Queen's. The vault lights hummed gently above them, but no one moved. Not the valet, who now stood frozen with the polished cloth still in hand. Not the aides, who hovered at the edge of the corridor, uncertain whether to approach or retreat. and not Sergeant Aldric Bainbridge, whose boots remained planted 2 paces in front of the limousine, like he was part of the stone beneath him. Camilla was the only one who moved. She paced once, slowly, in front of the Phantom, fingers lightly brushing the side mirror as though reasserting control with each pass. Her tone was deceptively casual. "I understand sentiment, Sergeant. I do. But it cannot stand in the way of function." Bainbridge didn't reply. "This car has history." "Of course it does, but it also has potential. And in case you've forgotten, the royal family does not exist to enshrine the past. We represent continuity. This vehicle will serve the crown once again." He didn't blink. "It was sealed." Camilla turned, eyebrow raised. "So?" Bainbridge stepped forward. Not confrontational, just steady. "It was personally sealed, posthumously, under verbal directive from Her Majesty's Registrar, co-signed by the Archivist, reviewed by Prince William." "Reviewed?" Camilla echoed. "You mean sentimental nonsense passed along like folklore?" "It's logged," Bainbridge said, "in the Heritage Vault, line 14C, static class, custodial lock." She shook her head slightly, as though speaking to a stubborn child. "That lock is discretionary, and I've now authorized release. Your signature isn't in the system." Camilla's lips thinned. "I don't need to sign systems. I speak for the king." "No, ma'am," Bainbridge. "You speak as Queen Consort. There is a difference, and the king hasn't signed either." That finally made her pause. Behind her, Thomas reappeared, stepping closer with a tighter grip on his folio. "Look, this is being blown out of proportion. Mum just wanted a vehicle that means something, a visible bridge, a continuation." "She didn't choose it," Bainbridge. "Excuse me?" "She didn't choose it," Bainbridge repeated. "The Queen did, again and again, not for cameras, not for performance, for quiet work, for reflection." Camilla stepped in again. "That reflection ends here. If we tether every object to memory, we lose the ability to evolve. This car has sat in silence for over a decade." "That silence," Bainbridge said, voice hardening, "was hers." Camilla's posture stiffened. "You're obstructing a sovereign-advised decision. You're repurposing a sealed legacy with no chain of custody." She stared at him. "You forget your place." "My place," he said, "is between memory and misuse." Thomas broke in again, frustrated. "This is ridiculous. You'll be reassigned by morning. Mum has the authority." Bainbridge's tone didn't change. "Then you'll need to sign it, on royal broadcast, in public view. Let's see how the people feel watching you hand off the Queen's last private vehicle, like it's an auction lot." Camilla's eyes narrowed. "You're skating on very thin ice." Bainbridge's voice dropped low. "And you're the one walking across it." The vault fell still again. Something had shifted. Not the balance of power, the balance of permission. And it was about to snap. The valet made the mistake first. Perhaps he thought the tension had passed. Perhaps Camilla's lingering silence felt like permission. Or perhaps he was just too junior to know what silence really meant. But the moment his hand moved toward the fob, the black ignition remote nestled neatly inside the silk-lined tray, it was as though he'd triggered a silent alarm in the room. Bainbridge stepped forward instantly. "Stop!" The valet froze, fingers an inch from the lid. Camilla didn't react right away. She was staring at the vehicle's bonnet again, lips tight, as if measuring how far she could push this without provoking something irreversible. Then she said, without turning, "Start the engine." Bainbridge moved between the valet and the tray in a single unhurried step. "Stand down!" The valet looked panicked now. "Ma'am?" "I said, start the engine," Camilla repeated, sharper this time. "Do not touch that fob." Bainbridge's voice was firm, eyes fixed on the young man. "You'll be violating a Class 2 custodial protocol." Camilla's voice sharpened. "This is a disgrace." And that was the moment Bainbridge stopped being quiet. His voice rose, not loud, but clear, sharp, and enough to echo off the chamber's vaulted ceiling like a thrown gauntlet. "What's disgraceful is robbing the only vehicle she chose to arrive in silence." Everyone stopped. Even the distant corridor seemed to still. The aides paused mid-step. The valet froze, hand hovering. One of the Windsor attendants turned fully. as if to confirm what they'd just heard. Camilla blinked, momentarily thrown by the volume, the clarity, the absolute conviction in it. Bainbridge didn't lower his voice now. That engine hasn't turned since the Queen last stepped out of it. That seat still holds the imprint of a woman who ruled without needing a crowd. That scent in the leather, it's hers, and you want to hand it off to your son like it's a decorative antique. Thomas stepped forward, rattled. "You've crossed the line." "No," Bainbridge snapped, turning to him. "You did, when you touched her key." Thomas looked lost for a second, caught between entitlement and reality. Camilla recovered faster. She stepped closer, her tone colder than before. "You forget who you're speaking to." "No, ma'am," Bainbridge said, eyes locked on hers. "You forget who she was." The silence after that was total. Even the security lights above the vehicle seemed dimmer, as though unwilling to highlight what had just unfolded. Camilla turned her gaze to the valet again. "Retrieve the folder," she said stiffly. "Now!" But no one moved. Thomas hesitated, lips parted as if to argue, but he couldn't seem to find the right words, because Bainbridge wasn't standing in the way of a car. He was standing in the way of erasure, and he wasn't alone anymore. Down the corridor, footsteps were approaching. Not fast, not loud, but the kind of footsteps that came with authority, with decision, with finality. The footsteps slowed as they reached the archway. No fanfare, no announcement, no uniformed escort. Just a single figure stepping into Vault 2, dressed in a dark wool overcoat and soft leather shoes, his expression unreadable. Prince William. The room shifted instantly. Every aide stood straighter. The valet lowered his gaze. Even Camilla's posture tensed, though she quickly smoothed her expression. William took in the scene with one glance. Bainbridge standing firm beside the Phantom, Thomas clutching the leather folio with two hands, and Camilla positioned halfway between indignation and retreat. He said nothing at first. He simply walked forward, slow and calm, past the row of brass display tags and velvet cords, stopping just to the side of the Phantom's front left fender. "Sergeant Bainbridge." "Sir?" "What's the situation?" Bainbridge didn't flinch. "Unscheduled attempted extraction of the 1953 Phantom IV, sir. No registered authorization from Windsor Archive. Verbal clearance claimed by Queen Consort's office. I intervened." William nodded once, then turned to Camilla. "Was this discussed at council?" Her answer came after a beat too long. "It was advised informally. I acted in the King's confidence." William didn't challenge the words, but he didn't validate them either. "There's no recorded release, no transport notice, no media scheduling. This car is legacy sealed." Thomas jumped in, as if trying to regain lost ground. "It's not for show, just for a few events. Country charity drive. Mum thought it might send a message of continuity." William finally turned toward him. "And that message requires this vehicle?" Thomas hesitated. "It's meaningful. Familiar. People remember it." William's expression didn't change. "They remember who was inside it." Camilla stepped forward. "It's been sitting untouched for over a decade. What good does it serve, locked in a vault?" William looked at her, direct, quiet. "It serves the truth that not everything is meant to be repurposed." A silence pulsed between them. Camilla's jaw shifted, but she didn't respond. William turned back to Bainbridge. "You did the right thing." Then he glanced at the surrounding staff. "Log this attempt. Add an incident notation to Vault 2. Heritage disruption flag. Mark the entry non-transferable." He stepped to the vault wall, where the biometric panel waited silently. He didn't scan his own hand. Instead, he nodded toward Bainbridge. "Sergeant, close it." Bainbridge moved without hesitation. He stepped to the vault's internal panel, keyed in his code, and reset the protective status to sealed class, non-mobile. The digital light turned blue. The quiet hiss of the locks engaging echoed through the chamber. When the sound faded, William spoke again. Lower now, but no less firm. "If the king wishes to challenge the seal," he said, without turning to Camilla, "he may bring it before the full custodial council." Then he paused, just long enough for it to be unmistakable. "But until then, this vehicle stays." William didn't move. He stood beside the sealed vault, hands loosely clasped behind his back, posture straight but not theatrical. He wasn't here as a son or a soldier. He was here as a witness. Camilla's expression had cooled to stone. Her chin was raised, but the edges of her voice betrayed the effort to maintain control. "I don't believe," she said slowly, "that sealing history away from view is how we honour it." William tilted his head. "And I don't believe rebranding it for relevance is how we preserve it." Thomas shifted uncomfortably beside her. "It's a car," he muttered, voice low but not low enough. "We're not melting down the crown jewels." William turned. His voice was even. "This car isn't just a machine. It's the last one she chose. The one she used when she didn't want ceremony, when she wanted to arrive, not appear." Camilla folded her arms. "You're mistaking sentiment for policy." "No," William said calmly. "I'm honouring instruction." He walked once around the Phantom, slow and deliberate, then stopped at the rear door. His eyes settled on the chrome handle, then drifted upward to the faint smudge still left on the glass from that final drive. "She didn't give us a written decree," he said. "She left something more difficult, restraint." Camilla stepped forward. "You're protecting an object." "I'm protecting a boundary," William replied, "between remembrance and exploitation." Thomas opened the folio one last time, holding it out like a peace offering. "Everything's signed. Mum authorised it." William didn't even look at the pages. "Not everything that's signed is settled." He turned to Bainbridge. "Restore the ceremonial seal." Bainbridge nodded, retrieved the velvet-lined case from the display wall, and stepped to the front of the vehicle. With practised care, he unfolded the gold-braided rope and clipped it across the Phantom's hood line, symbolic but absolute. He placed the crested plaque at its centre. "Legacy class, not in circulation." William turned to the staff assembled near the corridor. "This vehicle will remain sealed until further notice. All attempted transfers are to be flagged and reported directly." Camilla stared at him for a long moment. Then, finally, her voice softened. "Barely." "You're making a point." William met her gaze. "So were you." A pause. And then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked out. Thomas lingered behind. He looked at the car once more, then at Bainbridge, then back at William. "You really think she'd care?" William's reply was quiet. "I don't think. I remember." Thomas didn't respond. He followed his mother down the corridor, footsteps a touch faster than before. Bainbridge stood silently beside the vehicle. William didn't linger. He gave a final nod to the sergeant, then to the still-watching aides. "If the king has questions," he said, "send them to me." And then he left, just as he had arrived, without spectacle, without announcement, but with every decision made. The lights dimmed automatically as the last pair of footsteps faded down the corridor. Vault 2 was still again. Bainbridge remained a moment longer, alone beneath the amber glow, his hands clasped gently behind his back. The kind of stillness he held wasn't protocol. It was memory. It was weight. He moved quietly to the front of the Phantom and crouched by the grille, not to inspect, not to document, just to be close. From his inside breast pocket, he drew a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside was a pressed lavender sachet sewn by the Windsor archive staff. Identical to the one the Queen had kept beneath the seat for over 20 years. Bainbridge didn't speak as he slipped it into the narrow storage drawer inside the driver's door, tucking it behind the steering column. Then he stepped to the rear. He opened the passenger door carefully. No creak, just the soft release of air from leather that hadn't felt warmth in over a decade. The inside still held her. Not just the perfume or the imprint on the armrest, or the faint scuff on the floor mat from her riding boot, but her presence. On the seat was a tartan scarf, folded with perfect symmetry. Bainbridge hadn't placed it there. It had always been there. Staff never moved it. He lifted it gently, refolded it tighter, and tucked it inside the glove compartment beside a crested notepad and an untouched royal pen. Then, slowly, reverently, he closed the door. It clicked shut with a quiet that felt final, not funereal, not heavy, just exact. He retrieved the ceremonial tag from the sealed case, an engraved brass plate on a velvet backing, and fastened it across the steering wheel with a clear archival band. "Do not operate. Legacy Memorial. Custodial Seal, Windsor Archive, Prince William. The digital panel on the vault wall blinked green as he re-engaged the lockdown sequence. One hiss, one click. The chamber fell still again. Outside the viewing glass, no one waited. Camilla was gone. Thomas hadn't returned. The aides had dispersed. There was no press, no announcement, no noise. Just one man, one vehicle, and one absence that still shaped the air. Bainbridge took one last walk around the Phantom, slow, even, respectful. As he reached the exit, he paused, turned, and flicked the main vault switch. The gallery lights lowered to their resting level. The Phantom settled deeper into shadow. The gleam of its frame, now more suggestion than presence. It didn't need to be seen. It only needed to remain. He stepped into the corridor and closed the vault behind him. A soft mechanical lock engaged with a low thump, and with it, quiet returned. Down the corridor, a single aide passed by without meeting his eye. No one said a word, and no one tried again. Would you have let the limousine go? Was Sergeant Bainbridge right to raise his voice? And if you were Prince William, would you have stepped in sooner? If you believe legacy deserves silence, not spectacle, tap that like button now. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on so you don't miss a single story they'd rather keep behind palace gates. Share this video with someone who still remembers the Queen behind the glass, and check out the other stories on your screen now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, right here.